Welcome to the Practical Mystic Show, where we bring you simple tips and techniques from around the globe to help practical people deal with extraordinary experiences. And now, your favorite scientist, shaman, and sacred clown, and also the show's host, Janine Bolin.
And welcome to the Practical Mystic Show. I'm your hostess, Janine Bolin, and I am here with Alison Repp today, and I just cannot tell you how excited I am because this woman, she actually has these mindset boot camps. She's been working on online courses, and this was done long before other people decided they needed to do online courses. She was already moving her practice to an online setup, and that was what was so intriguing to me, was how she brought all that to forefront. Thank you so much for being with us today, Alison. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm just as excited to be here as you are to have me here. So we're aligned with that.
Yeah, I almost forgot to hit the record button. Just to let you know, we were like talking ahead of time what we wanted to discuss, how we wanted to help people. And then I was like, you know what, we got to stop talking and just start recording and get this going. So thank you so much. We decided that there are 3 points, because Alison is very broad and she is able to embrace a lot of different talents and gifts and demographics. We really wanted to hone in on her 3 passions, because we know that if she really talks about these 3 passions, then you as the listener will really be able to take some of the practical tools that she has and be able to use them. So starting off, we're just going to talk a little bit about the type of people that seem to kind of fall into your work, Alison. If you don't mind, first of all, talking about what it is that you do, what you enjoy, and then let's talk a little bit about the people that are waking up around you and how you like to embrace them. So if you don't mind, let's go there.
Yeah. It all started in my private practice. I'm a licensed therapist. And it was interesting because when I was in my undergrad, I was getting very into the mystical, spiritual world. And then when I entered my graduate schooling to be a therapist, I, for some reason, got this idea that they were separate and that they couldn't go hand in hand. And because the therapy was really focused on the 3D human experience. And so I kind of got away from my spirituality to focus on this training. And when I got into my private practice after I graduated, I started getting back into the spirituality, learning. And I just started to realize that the two needed each other. And so I started integrating it in my practice, and in lots of different ways, just in ways that I knew would make sense to the particular client. And doing that, integrating the two, just took everybody to a completely new level, because you kind of need the practical skills for the human experience, and then to not get stuck in the present or the past. You need those tools for how to move forward and create your future. I feel like I'm getting a little off topic here, but the clients that I now work with are women, and I ended up, when COVID started, it's been such a huge blessing. I took all the things that I would teach to my clients, which were this core set of skills that apply to everything in life, everything that comes up, and I put them into an online video mindset boot camp. And I ended up doing it just for women because that's what my guides told me to do. And so now it has expanded, and I'm doing workshops as well. And I'm getting more ideas for the future that I won't share yet, because we'll see when they come to fruition. But I also have free workshops, and it's just amazing how, when you align with your purpose, how easily all of that expands. So did that answer your question?
Oh, it does. Yes, very well. And so you have 3 courses, right? 3 different courses, and they're on your website.
I have one main boot camp. It's a video boot camp. I then also have a free workshop. I also have a quiz, and I have just an exercise that has to do with authenticity that I sell separately, but it's also included in the bootcamp. So right now I just have one main course with the other little, freebies for people. And we'll see where it goes in the future.
Yes, I just remember going to your website going, oh, this is so cool. I just really liked how you had everything laid out. It was very easy to understand. It wasn't complicated. There wasn't like what you sometimes find with therapists where they have a lot of lingo affiliated with it, and trying to figure out where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do is difficult. And your website is very practical. So thank you so much for that. So let's talk a little bit about the 3 areas that we wanted to really help listeners with. And the first, I'm going to let you guys know that what we're doing is we're talking first about negative thoughts. The next one is unhelpful emotions. And the third one is, what does it really mean to realign with your authenticity? So the first one, dealing with negative thoughts. One of the things Alison and I were talking about before we got on was how some people say, okay, law of attraction, I've got to be positive all the time, and I have to ignore my negative thoughts. And so go ahead and talk to us a little bit about what your experience has been regarding the negative thoughts and how you help your clients.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, even if people don't understand the law of attraction, there's this movement for being positive all the time. And, on some level, even if they aren't consciously aware of it, everybody's recognizing that their thoughts really do create their reality, and that it creates their at least their internal reality, right? And it's a very empowering thing, and it's wonderful to understand that. But then people start to become scared of their negative thoughts, and it ends up kind of being detrimental to them, because there is no human experience without quote unquote negative thoughts. That is why, and the same thing with emotions, with the painful emotions, it is why we came here to be human. It is a way for us to level up. We have to have that shadow side, that darkness, to be able to find more light. And so first, I just want to quickly explain the difference between thoughts and emotions, because they are 2 separate things. And it's really important to understand that they're separate, because you will deal with them in very different ways. So thoughts are strings of words that go through your head. They are the sentences. They also include images, but those are our thoughts. Now, our thoughts actually create a chemical release into our body, and they create an emotion. And so that's why we think they're the same thing, because they're very closely connected. But the emotion is a feeling, right? That's why we call them feelings too, is because it's actually something that you feel in your body. And yes, we have thoughts to describe and to name the emotion, but the emotion is something that is felt. The thought is something that is just made up of words in your mind. So with thoughts, you're always going to have negative thoughts. We have to have negative thoughts because they protect us. They also show us what we don't want. And there's so much use for our negative thoughts. And what happens is people think that they have to only think positive thoughts so that they can manifest what they want in life. And they try to push the negative thoughts away, or they try to find ways to get rid of the negative thoughts forever. But those negative thoughts will inevitably come back. And so when they do, and you think you've gotten rid of them or escaped them somehow, they are even louder, right? So the thing that I teach people to do is basically to turn the volume down on the thoughts. We're not going to try to get rid of them. We're going to be accepting of them and to use them to our benefit. And so when you have, and here's the thing too, I don't call them positive or negative thoughts. And I loved reading this in your book, the Finding the Divine book. You were talking about how there is, on the when we're not in the human experience, when we are our spiritual selves, there's no such thing as like good, right, wrong, bad, any of those dualities. And I approach thoughts in the same way, is that there's no right or wrong or good or bad or positive or negative. But the way that I approach them is, are they helpful or unhelpful to you, right? It doesn't make them wrong or bad if they're unhelpful. It just means that it's not great for you. It's not helping you in your experience. And so when you recognize that you're having an unhelpful thought, I teach people to get some distance from it, to be an observer of it instead of internalizing it as who they are. And I have a lot of different techniques that I use in the boot camp, but the main one that I usually use myself is just simply saying, oh, thanks, mind, when I notice those thoughts. And to judge, or to not judge the thoughts, but to just observe them with curiosity. And so that's just a little tool that I like the best, because it's just not putting a lot of weight on the thought. It's just like, oh, thanks, and moving on, right? But you're not pouring your energy into getting rid of them or changing the thought into, the negative thought into a positive one. You're just not pouring energy into the unhelpful thought at all. So then you are able to spend energy on things that are more fulfilling to you, instead of being caught up in fighting the natural part of you that's human.
I totally agree. And I really enjoyed the way you described how you're like, oh, thank you, mind, and then moving on, right? You acknowledge it and move on without judgment. In The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle talks about how when you have thoughts that are not necessarily helpful, or, you don't really want to be having them, to distance yourself and be the observer. And one of his little tips that I'll add and piggyback onto yours is act like you are a cat that is looking at a mouse hole, and you want to see what is the next thought that's going to come through. Just like Alison said, you acknowledge the fact you have thoughts. And like Alison said, you need to be the observer. But I, Janine, desperately needed a metaphor, because that's kind of how I live my life. So to sit there and play pretend I'm a cat looking at a mouse hole, waiting to see what the next thought is going to be, you can go a long time in your meditations without a thought because you're observing. And that really helped me. Just like I love the way you talk about you acknowledge it and move on, because you're a mother, right? You've got a couple, 1 or 2 or 5 kids. I forget how many.
Two. You're the one with the full tribe of kids. I don't know how you do it. but I know as a mother, though, we don't have the luxury of time as they used to, like when we had to wash our clothes by hand. Thank God we don't. I like my machines. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we don't have the luxury of time like a lot of the older techniques had. So thank you to have practical mystics like Alison, who have modern approaches that are very fast and very powerful to help you transition. So the old school Eastern way of talking about this was whether your thoughts were appropriate or inappropriate for your lifestyle. But I prefer your word, which is helpful or not helpful, because there's no shadow of judgment on something like that. It's just, is it helpful or is it not helpful? So thank you, Alison. Let's move on to the painful emotions and the tip that you like to give your people on how to move past, like, grief is very large right now. People are in grief about a life that they're not going to have. We have teenagers who are in grief because they're not going to have the graduation they wanted. Grief is a big one, and that's the lowest frequency. It's right there with depression, right? So that's an extreme example. If you want to start a little bit higher, like more anxiety or nervousness, and talk about some tools, we'd love to hear what you have to share. Yeah. So with emotions, there is actually just one tool that I shared. I'm not going to give away all of it here because it's in the boot camp. It's a trickier one to talk about with emotions.
Okay.
Because there's one tool for processing emotions that I use. And I'll give little tidbits here, but, all of what's great about this approach that I've been using over the years is, like I said, is all of these skills apply to everything. So you don't need to like say, oh, okay, I'm having this kind of thought, so I'll use this technique, or what was that technique for when I feel anxiety versus, you know, grief. And so with those painful emotions, let me just preface this with, we spend a lot of time, same way with negative thoughts, running from them or repressing them. And a lot of times we don't even know it. And we do it because in our society, we are not taught to process them. We are taught that they are bad and scary and wrong, and that we just need to be happy. And
and how dare you bring me down when I'm having a good moment, right? It's all about that controlling your environment stuff that we sometimes get wrapped up in. I'm guilty of that, you know?
Yeah. But in the same way as you're always going to have negative thoughts, you're always going to have painful emotions come up. And so what matters is how you react to those emotions, because if you react by running or repressing them or distracting yourself all the time, that's why COVID's been so hard for a lot of people, is because we don't have as many distractions now to be busy and out of our houses running around. And we're having to face those emotions. And again, same way with thoughts, when you think that you've gotten rid of it, and then you feel it again, it's even more intense when you feel it again. And so when you have these painful emotions, I urge people to find where it is in your body. Again, I'm not going to go through the whole process because
your boot camp is totally good. Yeah. No, it's okay. It's a process.
I do want to give tips. So drop down into your body, because we're always in our minds and we're always trying to analyze everything and come up with, why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling this? Like, if we figure out why we're feeling it, then suddenly it will disappear. And that's not the case. And we're, again, wasting all this energy.
Right.
So drop down into your body and notice where you are feeling it most intensely. And again, observe it with curiosity instead of judgment. I cannot stress this curiosity instead of judgment thing enough, with thoughts, emotions, everything in life, with interacting with other people, because judgment just creates more negative thoughts, and judgment creates more painful emotions, right? And so if you could do it like the mouse hole, I love that, or like a little kid seeing something for the first time, or like a scientist, right? You're a scientist, like discovering something new. It just doesn't give it as much power over your internal state. That makes sense.
Right. You and I were talking about how it's the beginner's mind. If you approach it like a beginner, you're open to all the avenues and all the potentiality of it. And sometimes we totally shut that down, because if you're judging it, man, you're just building more barriers. You're putting up more walls, you're trying to sequester it and seclude it and put it behind, steel girders. And it's just not helpful.
You're scared of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You become scared of it.
Raising my hand right now. Yes, I'm very good at that. Thank you very much.
Oh, I mean, so am I. And that's the thing, is nobody's ever going to be perfect at this. But would you rather be a little bit better or a lot of it better by learning some really helpful techniques, or just continuing to be miserable,
Right. Yeah, we did talk about that. I do want to move on, because for those who are listening, Alison has an amazing boot camp, which is why I, was reaching out to her to get her onto the show so that she could talk a little bit about that. She has some brilliant tools. Go to her website. She has lots of free stuff on it that you can look through and see what she's doing with that. Let's talk about this thing, because this was a hot topic. I didn't realize what a hot button it was for us until we started talking, and that was realigning with your authenticity. This is everywhere in the metaphysical, psychic, and spiritual communities. You need to be authentic, be yourself, you be you. These are platitudes. Forgive me for saying that. And I'm not trying to be nasty to anybody, but they're platitudes when somebody is struggling. If somebody is challenged, just you be you. I remember when I was in a very depressed state after my father died, I didn't know how to be me right then, because I was learning how to be me grieving. I had never learned how to, because when my mom died, I was too busy. I was like at college and my dad was not doing well. And I have 4 kids, right? So I was trying to learn what it meant to be Janine grieving, because I hadn't ever been Janine grieving. So that for somebody to come up to me and then say, you just be you, that was just crazy confusing. So I would love for you to chat a little bit about how people can realign to their authenticity, even while they're learning how to be themselves.
Yeah. So the way that I go about authenticity is defining your core values. And there is another hot topic word, right? Like your values and I am very, very honed in on this and practical about this, because I know the frustration of just like, how, right? So I just want to be clear first that it is natural to become misaligned with who you truly are, because we are taught in our society when we're born from our parents, you should be this way, or your teachers tell you that this way of being is the best way. And we have all these influences. And so we're just trying to make it. We're just trying to be good people. And so we're like, oh, well, I'll do this and I'll do this thing. And I should volunteer more and I should whatever it is. And we get just really misaligned with ourselves. It doesn't mean that we're bad people. It just means that we are not living in alignment with our unique core values. Now, when I say core values, this is not morals. This is not virtues. This is not shoulds. It has nothing to do with anything outside of yourself. What values are is who it feels best for you to be. It is who you are being, what you are doing when you are being the very best version of yourself. And I love this approach to it, because a lot of times people will say, well, like, I value honesty. I just really I need people to be honest with me. I don't want dishonest people in my life. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that is a goal, right? But
Exactly.
the way that I approach this. Right?
No. Oh, wait a minute. This is brilliant. Forgive me. I'm going to just pause you right here. Whenever someone says what I need or what I want is I want other people around me to behave in a certain way. You and I were both talking about this. This is an external locus of control, meaning you have no control over that unless you personally manifest it first. Like you must radiate that in order to then be able to have people around you respond to that frequency and decide maybe that's a happy place to be, right? And anyway, so forgive me for jumping in like that, but you were so on point with that of whenever you see yourself starting to demand in your value system that other people have to behave a certain way to you. Now this is different. We're not talking about domestic abuse and blah, blah, blah. We're not talking, we're talking about emotional things that are going on, but I just had to share that with you because over and over, I see that in people who are trying so desperately to feel better by changing the externals. And what you are so good at is doing the internal. Yeah, that's all my focus is because it's the most empowering thing, otherwise you're just giving your power away. And when you get caught up in that cycle of wanting other people to be a certain way in order to please you, then you also subconsciously are putting yourself in a position where you believe that you have to change yourself to please others. And round we go in a cycle of misery. So we're not jumping on that merry-go-round. We're going to stay off the merry-go-round and Allison's going to take us home. So you've been trying to make a point here. No, it's fine. No, I mean, this is how these dialogues are supposed to go, right? So with the values, then they are something that you can always be in alignment with, no matter what the situation is. That doesn't mean that it's always appropriate. That doesn't mean that you always have to be aligned with all of your values. For example,
humor is one of my values, or cussing, but it wouldn't be appropriate for me to walk into a funeral and start cussing and telling jokes, right? So you don't always have to be aligned with your values. They are fluid, they're flexible. But when you understand your core values, like you were saying, you no longer have to feel like you have to change yourself to please somebody else. You no longer, if you really are truly understanding what core values are and the magic of them, you're no longer asking other people to change to please you. You understand that they have a different way that it feels good for them to be, and you're more accepting. You end up being able to align with them, like I said, no matter what the circumstances are, and you then enjoy your journey to achieving your goals. So often we think, oh, I'm going to reach this goal and then I'll be happy, or then I'll be more playful, or then I'll whatever. And then we get there and we're happy for a brief moment and fulfilled for a brief moment. And then again, we go to the next goal and we're miserable for, however long until we reach that goal. So it helps you to enjoy that journey. And it helps you to align with your purpose. And so these core values, like I was saying, honesty thing. So it wouldn't be, a value of mine is when people are honest. If you thought, if honesty was a value to you, that would mean is that it feels best for you when you are being honest with others. For me, it feels best for me when I am being genuine. And that includes cussing, that includes being silly and goofy, that includes being loud, that includes singing, that includes all these different things. But those are things that I always have access to. And so this is one of the most powerful exercises that I have with clients and that I have in the boot camp, because it allows you to be authentically you and to clearly define that. So the exercises actually, there's 100 values cards that you print off and cut out, and you sort through them and you get down to your top 7 to 10. And when you have that clarity with that, then it's so much easier to align with them. And you're not just kind of like, guessing, oh, this feels good to me, or this feels good to me. And it just clearly defines who it feels best for you to be. And once you align with those, like I said, it really starts leading you into your purpose. And I am a living example of that.
Exactly. You and I were talking about that, how basically our businesses, we got into our businesses because we just wanted to show people what we learned and how we're living what we have learned, and we help other people out. And just so you guys know, and Alison doesn't know I'm going to be saying this, but she actually has those cards already printed up, beautifully done, and they're available on her website. So you don't even have to print them off. If you want a really pretty deck of cards that are printed up, was it like $17 or something like that?
But they actually aren't printed out.
They're not printed.
No, they aren't printed out. I need to take some tips from you of getting into the packaging things up and mailing them business, because you are good at that. No, they're a print. It's a printout. So
I love. Yeah,
beautiful.
They are. I loved how they looked and what they were like. So yeah, that's something that you can get very low cost, just to see if the way that Alison has these very practical tips, if they're in alignment with where you want to go in your life. Because we hear these words all the time: authenticity, be in your own alignment, understand your purpose. I am currently today 56 years old, and I'm still working on my purpose, because guess what? My whole purpose is about expansion. I know I'm never going to be done. I will die with projects in my basement that I could not complete, because, I have enough stuff in my head that's going to last me at least 300 years, to be able to get it all done, because I'm just that kind of creative. But at the same time, I'm going to die with a smile on my face, because gosh, did I have a good time creating? And so that's what's so much fun about it. So if you wouldn't mind.
And I will say too, real quick, that if they get the $17 authenticity card, it is also included in the boot camp. So when they purchase that, they will get a code for $17 off the boot camp if they decide that they want to go through and do the entire thing.
Yeah, well, that is just cool. All right. I didn't know that about that particular button on your website. That's great. So
Yeah,
let's go ahead.
Best to me.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's how we treat our people. We take care of our people. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. I would love for you to kind of bring it all together. You've given us a couple of tools, any tools that pop into your head that you would like to help us with turning down the volume on thoughts. I don't want to have you reveal too much about the emotional stuff because that boot camp is so epic. But what are some tools or ideas that we could do for the alignment aspect of our authenticity? Because that's something that's constantly something that pops into people's heads.
Yeah. And before I forget, remind me to give you the discount code for listeners for the boot camp.
Okay, no problem.
So one of the ways, aside from the values card sort, which it's called the authenticity card sort on my website, one of the other most powerful ways to do it is to think about the times in your life that you look back on with the most pride or fondness, and think, who was I being then? What was I doing? Or that you have just the most love for, or that just bring you those good feelings. For example, I have one. I was in Vegas with my husband. He was working, and I spent 45 minutes jumping up and down on the bed in the hotel room with music blasting, just like dancing all around. And that was a great memory for me, because for me, that was being present in the moment and playful and grateful. And, there were a few things that popped up. And so I can take those things, right, that I was playful, and I can bring that into so many other aspects of my life and find so much more fulfillment in my life that way. So it doesn't have to just be fun times. It can also be times where you just felt good about who you were. It could be that you were direct, or that you were reliable, or that you were genuine, or that you were loving or caring, or, it's limitless, honestly.
And one of the things that you and I had discussed earlier was we both have a desire. We come at it from different perspectives, and we come at it from using different tools, but it's the same focus. We want people to be able to sit in a room by themselves and be very comfortable, just me, myself, and I, and to be in a place where they are at peace with all that's happening within and without, because that's the hard part, right? Is we know we have that, spiritually speaking. Some of us have that gift, but we don't always know how to express that into the matrix. So any last thoughts on this before we wrap up?
The coupon code. So there will be a coupon code for your listeners. It will be, well, now I'm just making this up off the top of my head because I'm going to create it right after this. What do you want it to be? We could make it the we can make it Practical Mystic 100.
That sounds great. That.
So the boot camp is usually only $347. So this will make it $247. And I also have payment plans. So you can do a 3-month payment plan. So that means that your first month would only be $25. And then 2 more payments of $125. So
that makes sense. And thank you very much for doing that for our listeners. And Alison, how can people find you? What is the name of your website?
My website is letgoandfindflow.com.
Okay.
And then is there Instagram, I do a lot. So my name on Instagram is Alison_Repp. It's Alison with 1 L and then _REPP as in Peter.
Okay. So definitely Instagram is the place she hangs out, and that's how you can reach her there. And also definitely stop by and go to the letgoandfindflow.com and put in your coupon code, and definitely take Alison's bootcamp. I was lucky enough to be there when she was creating and building, and it is totally worth every penny. I was also lucky enough to be there when she was speaking about it from the stage. She's an internationally trained speaker, and she is worth every penny. So Alison, thank you so much for being on the Practical Mystic Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And so this is Janine Boland signing off. And remember, if you hear things, see things, experience things that the people around you don't, then you hang out with us here at the Practical Mystic Show. We have a lot of people that have that very same gift, and we'll be glad to bring them on the show and have them talk to you about how you too can be an empath, clairvoyant, psychic, medium, mystic, however you choose to label yourself, and still get along very well in this modern world. Have a great day.
This has been the Practical Mystic Show with Janine Boland. For show notes, resources, and more, visit the8gates.com. Thanks for listening.